Okay, this is the worksheet that you just got today. This video will not take the whole period, so go ahead and pause this recording until almost everybody has finished doing it. It should take everybody about 15 minutes, maybe 20, to do this worksheet. So go ahead and give the class 15 or 20 minutes to do this worksheet, and then play the video, for the second half of the class. If you've already done that and it's already, time has gone by and everybody's done, then of course go ahead and let the video play. Okay, let's do number 1. A study of the effect of living in public housing on family stability in low-income households was carried out as follows. A list of applicants accepted for public housing was obtained, together with a list of families who applied but were rejected by the housing authorities. A random sample was drawn from each list, and the two groups were observed for several years. Okay, first of all, is this an observational study or an experiment? Explain. So just answer out loud. What did you guys say? Observational study or experiment? Just blurt it out right now. Okay. This is an observational study. Okay, remember the difference between an observational study and an experiment is that in an observational study, the researcher is not doing anything to the subjects. The researcher is just observing the subjects doing what they were going to do anyway. So in this case, the researcher did not put some people in public housing and did not reject other people. That just was going on anyway. All the researcher did was look at the data from people who were living in public housing accepted, and looking at the lives of people who were rejected from public housing, and seeing how they turned out. So this is definitely an observational study. Now, what are the explanatory and response variables? Let's start with explanatory. Remember, the explanatory variables, if you're thinking of cause and effect, the explanatory variables are like the cause. Alright? They are the variables that we think might be responsible for some observed result. So, let's remember what the study is trying to examine in the first place. This is the study of the effect of living in public housing. So, that has got to be the cause that we're looking for. Living in public housing. So that's going to be the explanatory variable. Living in public housing. And I'm going to say or not, because that's the variable part. Either you do or you don't live in public housing. We need a little bit more room. Okay, now for the response variables. I feel like changing colors. Response variables. The response variables are the result. That we observe. Now, we're trying to find the effect of living in public housing on family stability. So, family stability is the result that we're looking at. I'm not sure exactly how they're measuring family stability, but the point is they're examining the connection between living in public housing or not and your family being stable or not. So, living in public housing or not is the cause. Your family being stable or not is the result. At least that's what they're trying to test. So, the response variable is, I'm just going to put family stability. Okay. Now, does this study contain lurking variables that may prevent valid conclusions on the effects of living in public housing? Are there lurking variables? Do you guys remember what lurking variables are? What are lurking variables? Blurt it out. I don't know if anybody said anything or not, but lurking variables they're the variables that are not among the variables that we are trying to measure. They are not one of the explanatory variables that we are trying to evaluate. In this case, the only variable we're trying to evaluate, the only cause, is whether you're living in public housing or not. So, if there are any other variables that might affect family stability, then those would be lurking variables. Now, there might be all kinds of lurking variables in a study like this. In fact, this is one of the problems when you try to do an observational study. An observational study is a good place to start, but when you really want to eliminate lurking variables, you really are going to have to do an experiment where you have controls that limit the lurking variables. Now, in particular, let's remember, how did the people get divided into these two groups? The people, some of them were living in public housing, some of them were not living in public housing. Who decided who was going to live in public housing and who wasn't? What happened? How did people get sorted into these two categories? Was it the researcher? Let's read back through the problem. A list of applicants accepted for public housing was obtained. And a list of families who applied but were rejected by the housing authorities. Not the researcher, the housing authorities. So look, some families were accepted and other families were rejected by the housing authorities. Now, you know, we weren't there, but do you have any guesses as to why some families were accepted to public housing? You know, these are all low-income families, so they all are in need. Why would some families be accepted while other families were rejected? Why would anyone be rejected by public housing? Well, the thing is, if your family has some major issues, problems, now that could be a variety of things. Mental illness, drama, you know, you could have runaways, people that are on drugs, criminals, that have been in trouble with the law. There are all kinds of drama and issues and problems that could be part of a family's history that would cause the family to be rejected from public housing by the housing authorities. Now, if you're a family that has those issues and you've already been rejected by the housing authorities, isn't it likely that your family is already less stable than the families that were accepted? So, if we are supposed to measure the effect of living in public housing on family stability, if we were to conclude, oh look, the families that are living in public housing seem to be more stable, whereas the families that are not living in public housing seem less stable. Would it be a valid conclusion that living in public housing must lead to more stability? Would that be a valid conclusion? No, that would not be a valid conclusion because of the lurking variables, because of the drama that caused certain families to be rejected in the first place. That drama causes the group of rejected families to have higher instability in the first place. It may or may not have anything to do with living in public housing or not. They had drama and issues and problems before they ever applied. So their problems were not caused by not living in public housing. Okay? So, that was problem number 1. And you should write as much of that down as you can. You have to decide exactly how you're going to word it. Hopefully I've explained it enough. Now, let's look at problem number 2. Researchers in Japan conducted an experiment on 13 individuals who were extremely allergic to poison ivy. On one arm, each subject was rubbed with a poison ivy leaf and told that the leaf was harmless. On the other arm, each subject was rubbed with harmless leaf and told that it was poison ivy. Well, let's stop and think about that for a second. Let me make sure this is sinking in. Basically, these 13 individuals were lied to. They had poison ivy and they had harmless leaf, but they were told the opposite. They were told that the harmless leaf was poison, and they were told that the poison was harmless. They were lied to. I'm not sure how ethical that is, but that's what happened. Let's see what happened to these people who were lied to about the poison ivy. Well, it turned out that all of the subjects developed a rash on the arm where the harmless leaf was rubbed. Of the 13 subjects, 11 did not have any reaction to the real poison ivy. So, let's break this down. What was the placebo in this experiment? What is a placebo? What does that mean? Do you guys remember? What does placebo mean? Hopefully you said something about when the subject is given some sort of a treatment that really isn't supposed to have any effect, like a sugar pill. Instead of being given aspirin or some other kind of drug that we're expecting to cause a change, if a person is giving a sugar pill, that's a placebo because a sugar pill is not really supposed to affect their body or their mind. Okay, so in this experiment, what was the placebo? Alright, well hopefully you picked up on the fact that the harmless leaf, okay, the leaf that was actually harmless, that's going to act as a placebo. Okay? Because people were given this harmless leaf. It really is not supposed to have any effect. But the people were told that it was poison. But it was harmless. Like the harmless leaf is basically like the sugar pill. It's not supposed to do anything. Now, even though they were given the harmless leaf, read again. What happened when the harmless leaf was rubbed on the arms of the people? Every subject was rubbed with a harmless leaf, told it was poison. All of the subjects developed a rash on the arm where the harmless leaf was rubbed. So the harmless leaf actually caused a rash. Everybody got a rash. So, can you guys see that this is the placebo effect? The people were told that it was poison, and the mind is a very powerful thing. If you believe that you were just rubbed with poison, well, let me tell you what, your skin is going to start to itch, you might start to scratch, you're going to feel awful, and you're going to easily wind up with a rash. So that's how the results of this study support the idea of a placebo effect. Harmless leaf should not have caused a rash, but it did cause a rash just because people thought that it would. So when thinking that something is going to cause an effect, actually just the thought of it changes your body. That's the placebo effect, whether it's something good or something bad. Okay, let's look at problem number 3. A researcher conducts an experiment to see if a new vitamin increases a person's energy level. The experimental group consists of college students who are given the vitamin daily. The control group consists of college professors who are not given the vitamin. The researcher finds that the energy level of the people in the experiment group is greater than those in the control group. As a result, the researcher concludes that the vitamin is effective. Identify any flaws in this experiment and describe how they can be corrected. Okay, take a moment and blurt out, talk to me, even though I'm not there. What is the major flaw that you see in this experiment? Start explaining. Okay, well, I'm going to feel really silly if that was silence went by and nobody was explaining anything about any problems that they saw. Hopefully, at least one person was jumping in and pointing out the very clear problems that we have. Look at the two groups that we're talking about. We have the experiment and we have the control group. Who was in the experimental group? Let me color coordinate this. So we have the experimental group. The experimental group consisted of college students. Okay? So the people that were given the vitamin, the experimental group, they were college students. Now, what about the control group? Let me change colors so it'll be clear. Okay, now let's talk about the control group. The control group consisted of college professors who were not given the vitamin. Okay? That was a little bit wild. Okay, they were not given the vitamin. So, the experimental group, college students. The control group, college professors. Now, what is this study supposed to measure? Something about a vitamin, but what about the vitamin are we trying to see? We're trying to see if the vitamin is going to increase a person's energy level or not. Now, with or without a vitamin, who would you expect to have more energy? College students or college professors? Yeah, obviously college students we would expect to have more energy. They're younger than college professors who tend to be a lot older. So, if the younger, more energetic college students are given the vitamin, then obviously the age of the students becomes a lurking variable. We were not trying to study how age affects energy level. We were trying to study the vitamin. So if we wanted to compare, we should have some sort of a randomizing choice of people that are put in the groups. And if we could randomize this somehow, then we could get two groups of people that have young and old all mixed together, and some of them could have the vitamin and some of them could not. But instead of giving all the young people the vitamin and all the older people don't get the vitamin, both groups, the vitamin group and the non-vitamin group, should be mixed. And the way they would be mixed if we chose them by random chance, random impersonal chance. That's how we would fix it. So you would write some sentences explaining what I just talked about. Okay, let's look at number 4. Determine which group is the experimental group and which group is the control group in the study. Let's see. A researcher is conducting a study to determine the effect of the flu vaccine, the effect the flu vaccine has on preventing the flu. The participants in the study are a group of people who received the flu vaccine and a group of people who did not receive the flu vaccine. Okay? So, determine which group is the experimental group and which group is the control group. Alright, so which group is the experimental group and which group is the control group? Blurt it out. The experimental group is the group that got the flu vaccine. And the control group is the group that did not receive the flu vaccine. Okay? So I'm not going to write down all these words. You write it down. Okay? So once again, the experimental group, that's the group who received the flu vaccine. And the people who did not receive the flu vaccine, that's the control. Alright, look at option B. Part B of the question. A school district is performing a study to determine whether or not an SAT prep course increases a student's SAT score. The participants in the study are a group of students who do not take the prep course and a group of students who do take the prep course. Okay, so who's the experiment? Who's the experimental group and who is the control group? Let's see. Well, students who do not take the prep course, which group are they? Hopefully you said they are the control group. The group of students who do take the prep course, that's the experimental group. Okay? Oh, there's another part down here. Part C. A researcher is conducting a study to determine the effects of caffeine on a person's heart rate. The participants in the study are a group of people who drink coffee daily and a group of people who drink coffee occasionally. Okay? So, we don't have a group that had no caffeine at all. But the best we can do, the people who drink coffee daily, experimental or control? Yeah, we're going to go with experimental. Alright, they have all the caffeine. The people who drink coffee occasionally, they have less caffeine, so they are going to be the control group. Okay, let's see what happened to the rest of my paper. It's way down here. Okay, look at problem number 5. A researcher is conducting a study to determine the effect of a new sunscreen on the prevention of skin cancer. The experimental group consists of lifeguards on an ocean resort. The control group consists of housekeepers at an ocean resort. Identify any flaws in the experiment and describe how they can be corrected. Okay? Somebody, please, do not leave me hanging. I'm going to count to 10 silently. Start talking to me about the flaw in this experiment. Go. Okay, I counted 10. Please tell me you guys weren't silent that whole time. If we're measuring the effect that sunscreen will have on preventing skin cancer, there's a big problem if we let one group be lifeguards and then we let another group be housekeepers. If you're going to have two groups and you want to eliminate the lurking variables, it's important that the two groups are the same, if possible, except for one has sunscreen and one doesn't have sunscreen. Well, who would we expect to have more skin cancer later in life? Lifeguards or housekeepers? I'm talking, regardless of what kind of sunscreen they use, who's at higher risk for skin cancer from the sun? Lifeguards or housekeepers? Yeah, lifeguards, they're out in the sun all summer long, so they are at higher risk in the first place. So, by comparing lifeguards and housekeepers, if it turned out that lifeguards had more skin cancer, okay, then let's see that they were the experimental group. They're the ones getting the sunscreen. So it would make it look like the sunscreen is not working because we'd have more people, even though they're using the sunscreen, they're getting more cancer, more skin cancer. And then the people that are not using the sunscreen are getting less skin cancer. It might even look like the sunscreen is giving people cancer. But obviously the difference wouldn't have anything to do with the sunscreen. It'd have to do with all the extra sun that the lifeguard gets versus the housekeepers. So again, the way you solve that problem is by your experimental group and your control group okay, your two groups should be random. So within the experimental group, you should have lifeguards and housekeepers and all kinds of different people from different professions, all mixed in together. You never want to have one group of all one profession and another group that has so much in common. Both of the groups should be similar as possible except for the thing that you're trying to measure. The only difference between the groups in this case should be that one has sunscreen on and one doesn't. Aside from that, the ages should be the same as much as possible, the races, the different types of jobs, and the way that you can balance all that out is by having plenty of people and by choosing them randomly. Okay. Okay, it's a couple more. Let's look at number 6. A large study used records from Canada's national healthcare system to compare the effectiveness of 2 ways to treat prostate disease. The 2 treatments are traditional surgery and a new method that does not require surgery. Okay, so traditional surgery versus a new method, non-surgery. Okay. The records described many patients whose doctors had chosen each method. The study found that patients treated by the new method were significantly more likely to die within 8 years. Okay? So, the non-surgery group had more deaths. Okay? The traditional surgery group had fewer deaths. Now, further study of the data showed that this conclusion was wrong. The extra deaths among patients who got the new method could be explained by lurking variables. Lurking variables. What lurking variables might have confounded the doctor's choice of surgical or non-surgical treatment? So, can you think of any variables that might lead to more deaths or fewer deaths besides the choice of which surgery, whether they had the surgery or not? Now, I'm not sure how many people this would occur to on your own, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump in here. Now, here's a hint. If you're a doctor and you have a choice, as your patients are coming before you, and they have this prostate disease, and you have a choice. Yeah, maybe you're going to do surgery, or maybe you're going to not do surgery and do something else. What kinds of factors might go into your decision as you try to decide, are you going to give this patient surgery or not? What might cause you to give one patient surgery and recommend no surgery for the other patient? What kind of factors would cause you to choose differently? Okay. I can think of a couple things. I'm hoping that somebody said something when I paused just then. Well, here are a couple factors that we came up with in the other class. If we are going to, as a doctor, decide not to give surgery, one reason why we might do that is, for example, the age of the patient. If you have a patient that's really old and they're fragile, surgery is a lot more dangerous on an older person than it would be on a younger person. So I'm just going to list this down. Age could be a lurking variable because you could have, if you have older patients and the doctor's saying, you know what, they're really too old for surgery, let's try this other treatment instead. And if those people wind up dying, it might not be because they chose this other method, it might be because they were weaker and more fragile and older in the first place, and that might explain why there were more deaths. On the other hand, the people that are getting the surgery, they were younger and stronger in the first place, so maybe that's why they don't die as often. Similarly to the age thing, the key about the age is if you're significantly older, it makes you more fragile, more vulnerable, and more likely to have complications and die. So also the state of your disease. If one person has if their disease is worse, so I'm just going to put how severe the disease is. How severe the disease is. If the doctor sees like your disease is extremely bad, then again you might be too fragile for the surgery, and he might feel, or she might feel, that the surgery will kill you. So the doctor might decide not to give you surgery, not because you don't need the surgery, but because you're too weak for this to survive the surgery. So they try the other method, hoping that it might work. But if you're already weak, and that's why you didn't get the surgery, then of course you're more likely to die. So if you're weaker, older, you have a more severe disease, these are all lurking variables that could cause the extra deaths. It might not be because the treatment is a poorer treatment. Okay, were we supposed to say how we would fix that? No, we were supposed to say it. Okay, let's look at this. You have 300 prostate patients who are willing to serve as subjects in an experiment to compare the two methods. Use a diagram to outline the design of a randomized comparative experiment. So remember the diagram that I showed you guys yesterday. So this is what we need. This is supposed to be randomized, so write this down. Okay, here's the key. We need randomized assignment to the groups. Okay, so we'd have some sort of a random number generator from the computer or the calculator or something, and that is how the subjects will get assigned to the two groups. So the two groups would be, we'll just call it group 1 and group 2. Okay, so group 1, if we have a total of 300 people, group 1 is going to have 150 people, and group 2 is going to have 150 people. But the original 300 were randomly divided up into these two groups. And then let's say group 1 gets the surgery, and group 2 gets the new treatment, the non-surgery. And then we compare the results of those two methods and see who has fewer deaths 8 years later. Okay, so then we compare deaths over time. Okay? Can you see how that is going to be a much more meaningful study? Because if we find that with these randomly selected groups, if the surgery group then still has fewer deaths and the new method still has more deaths, then we can more safely conclude that the surgery method is more effective at preventing death than the new method is. But who knows? We might find out that the new method with a random study is more effective. We'll have to do that study and find out. Okay, let's look at the last question on this paper. Eye cataracts are responsible for over 40% of the blindness around the world. Alright, eye cataracts are responsible for 40% of blindness. Can regularly drinking tea slow the growth of cataracts? That's the question. We can't experiment on people, so we use rats as subjects. Researchers injected 18 young rats with a substance that causes cataracts. One group of rats also received black tea extract. A second group received green tea extract. A third group got a placebo, a substance with no effect on the body. The response variable was the growth of cataracts over the next 6 weeks. Outline the design of this experiment. Okay, let's see. What are we going to do? First of all, let's see. Does it say how many? Okay, we have 18 young rats. Okay, so we start with 18 young rats. So, the best thing to do is always randomize. So we're going to randomly, alright, random group assignment. Okay, let's see, how many groups are there? Let's count them. 18 young rats with a substance that causes cataracts. One group had the black tea extract. So we've got group 1. Okay, a second group got green tea extract. Group 2. And a third got a placebo. So group 3. Okay, so group 1, how many rats are going to be in group 1, group 2, and group 3? Well, if there are 18 rats altogether, there are going to be 6 rats in each group. 6, 6, and 6 rats. So, as we said, the rats should be randomly assigned to each of these groups using some sort of a computer or number generator or something like that. Once the rats are randomly assigned to the 3 groups, then group 1 can get their, what was it? One group received black tea extract. The other group can receive their green tea. And the third group can get their placebo. Okay, and then we will compare. Let's see if I have space over here on the edge. We will compare cataract growth. Do you guys know what cataracts are? Cataract is a cloudiness in the lens of your eye that makes it hard for you to see because the lens of your eye is all cloudy. So it's this cloudiness in your eye. That's what a cataract is. That's what this experiment was talking about. Alright, well that's the end of this lesson. If there's any time left, the teacher will hand you the second sheet that we have, and you can go ahead and get started on that. And we will pick up from here and spend the rest of your time working on the other sheet, and we will pick up with that sheet and work on it tomorrow. Hopefully I'll be back tomorrow.